Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of My Fiber Fun. You guys, I did the first episode and I'm going to title it bonus episode simply because I did that one first, and then it dawned on me, hey, I need to get going with Mr. Andrews' story again. I was like, this would have been the perfect day for it. Then I was like, why not? I can do a second video because I think that first video was 20 minutes long. So I'm going to try to keep this short. We're only going to touch on a few things on the list on today. And then when we continue with it, and wait, y'all, I'm scared, okay? Because every time I was doing the book. I was doing the book because I think I told you guys that towards the end, Mr. Andrews told me after our book thing, we knew it wasn't going to happen, and he knew he was going to die and everything before the book could be completed through the Oklahoma Heritage Association. He told me, he said, what I want you to do is write a book about yourself, about your life, he said, and incorporate me in it. I'm almost certain that I told you guys that. So anyway, that's what I have tried to do. I've tried to write the story of my mom, about our caregiving journey, and I've also attempted to try to write the book about, I guess, myself with Mr. Andrews incorporated in it. And each time I've sat down at that computer to type, I think I told y'all this too, I always end up getting sick. So it dawned on me, wait a minute, I done started telling these stories as a way to get around trying to type it out on the computer, which I said I'll do later. But then what happened? Now I'm half dead. So I hope this don't take me out, because here I am again. I guess God said, okay, if I don't want you doing this, oh, I'm going to get your attention. I've already gotten it, but you still aren't getting the full message. So if I go down again, then listen, y'all, then I think I'll know for sure. But I'm already down, but I'm getting better. And so here I am again, attempting to tell this man's story, because it's like I feel it needs to be told. But, I've always thought that, okay, if I'm getting sick, maybe the story's not over or whatever, and maybe God's stopping me because the story's not over. Possibly. Now, that's just my thinking. But if that's the case, then, we'll find out, won't we? Or I'll find out. So we'll see what happens here, and we'll go from there. But in the meantime, I said a quick little prayer like, okay, God, please don't please. Okay. So anyway, we'll see. But anyway, we weren't almost done with it, but we're getting towards, because some of the stories that I'm going to do towards the end are a lot longer than what I'm doing now. I'm just kind of covering bases so that you'll get to kind of know him a little bit. But anyway, I guess, as you guys know, when I was in the hospital, I ended up meeting another centenarian. And then there's a friend of mine who's running for mayor. I think his grandmother is 99 and turning 100 in a couple of months. And he's throwing like this big citywide party or something. I could be wrong on that, but I know it's someone that's turning 100 in my city, and there's going to be like this big party. So I actually have the opportunity to meet another centenarian. Ain't that something? So, hey, that's wonderful. But anyway, but as you all know, when I was in the hospital, when I was in the ER there, half dead, a centenarian happened to come in. And I met her, recorded her. I just could not put her face on camera. She requested that I did not do that. But that lady she was every bit of 25, okay? Her brain was sharp. Everything about her was sharp, including her mobility and everything. She still lived alone, the whole 9 yards. But her niece, who was there, who was 80, is basically the person who deals with her and everything. She lives nearby, close by. And, and she takes her everywhere. But this lady is totally independent. I was like, wow, you're getting along better than I am. I was like, here I am. I can't walk. I was like, and you skipping along like any teenager. But anyway, so she did let me get her voice so that she could tell her age and everything, because I was like, y'all ain't gonna believe me. But it was true. I met another centenarian, and she was real nice. And what else? And she had the centenarian look. Remember I told you about that, about how their eyes sink in after they turn 100. It's a certain look that they have that will let you know they have lived a century on this earth. Okay, anyway, let's get back to Mr. Andrews, and we're going to keep it short today. Let's see where we're at. We're at 5 minutes. We're going to try to keep it at about 10 minutes here, and it's just to continue to get back into it. Okay, so what I'm going to tell you about today is about how he knew that he would live to be 100, how long his mother lived, about his siblings. He had 10 siblings. And one of his siblings died tragically. I may have told y'all that, but I didn't mark it off, so I'm not sure. He had a brother who was just walking through town. And in fact, this happened in, I think, the 80s. But anyway, he was walking through, and it was some guys lowering a piano out of a hotel. And it was a grand piano. They were lowering it from one of the upper floors from the hotel. And the cable that they had this piano on snapped just as his brother was walking by, and the piano fell, and that's how he passed away. He was killed by a piano. And so I don't know why Mr. Andrews told me that story. I guess it traumatized all of them, you know, because I think Mr. Andrews was in his 90s at the time. This was his youngest brother who had got killed, and I think he might have been in his early 70s. Because Mr. Andrews was quite a few years older than him. And so, so he passed away. And that's when he had lost his last sibling, because he had outlived the rest of his siblings. And there was 10 in all, 10 siblings, and 11th, you know, with Mr. Andrews, he was the 11th, one of the 11 children. But anyway, now on to Mr. Andrews' mother. Well, first of all, Mr. Andrews, he said ever since he was a kid, he knew that he would live to be 100 years old. Oh, and let me tell you about one story I didn't even write down that I forgot about. And I actually have him on film. I have the video somewhere. It's in the shed, packed away, because I did numerous videos of him. And we did one of when we went to his childhood home, the land that his father had staked out during the 1889 land run. And so we went to the home that his father actually built. It still stands today. And there was a family there. They were nice enough. They knew Mr. Andrews. And because Mr. Andrews would often go to the property, because the family cemetery was on the property. All the family members who had passed away throughout the years were buried on that land. And so the people were respectful, because it was acres and acres and acres. In fact, when we went to the cemetery, it was so far away from the house that the owners who owned it 20 years ago, I would assume they're still there. And they had been there like maybe 20, 30 years before I got there. But anyway, before, you know, I saw the place and visited. But anyway, the family cemetery is still on the land, which is was part of the purchase. So they always allowed Mr. Andrews to come anytime. And when he would drive there, he went in at the other entrance, but he would always stop to see them, that type of thing. It was considered historical. They had all these historical markers along that whole little highway that all these lands were on, because it was part of the 1889 land run. And so the owners of all these places now, they know that it's historical. They cannot make any changes to it because of the historical significance, but they all had an appreciation of the land, and so they left it the same. And so the ones, they live in the house. So I got to tour the house and everything. Nice size house, beautifully built. I'm like, this thing will withstand forevermore, because his father, Mr. Andrews, his father, all of his brothers, they were stonemasons by trade. And his father learned it, I guess, probably during slavery or whatever. I don't know, but it was learned. And it was a beautiful skill because they had built up that whole town. They built the other people's houses. They built, and that was how his father made a living, as a stonemason. And then they built up the town, everything. Okay, so anyway, so we visited for a while. I toured the place, and then we were on our way to the cemetery. So we were driving down the dirt road out back. It was probably about 2 miles away. This is how big this land area was that his father had staked out. And so Mr. Andrews had me to stop. And when we stopped, we were at this little creek, and the water was running through the creek. And so we got out the van. I, and then Byron, he was a friend of mine that was also a non-traditional student at Langston. And so he came along with us to do the filmography of everything. So it was 3 of us who visited Luther. It was the name of the town is Luther, Oklahoma. So if you want to pull up the history about the 1889 land run, pull up Luther, Oklahoma's history, and you might even see some photos. Any photos you see of any building there, you will know that Mr. Andrews' father pretty much built that. Okay, so anyway, so we stopped at this creek, and so Byron got out the van too, and I said, Byron, hit the record, because obviously he wants to tell me something about this creek, so let's do it. And so Mr. Andrews said, he started telling about how he was born. He said, I was born handicapped. And I was like, really? I didn't know that. He said, I was born with a stammering tongue. I'm like, okay, Mr. Andrews, what the heck is a stammering tongue? He said he stuttered really bad. He said he stuttered so bad that he could not really talk. He said that everything just came out. He could not talk. So basically he was like mute, because I'm quite sure you've seen people who stutter, and then you've seen people who are mute, but yet and still they try to talk and it comes out, or deaf mute. You think of a person who can't hear and they try to talk and it's, garbled and everything else. Some deaf people can talk, because I had a friend named Ruth who could talk, and she was deaf, but she went deaf during her childhood, and she knew how to read lips, and she knew how to talk still. Loudly, but she talked. Okay, so, but Mr. Andrews said he could not talk. He said, I was talkless. That's the way he put it. He said, I stuttered. He said, I just couldn't say anything that began, and he was very smart. He said, I couldn't say anything that began with vowels. He said, anything that had an A, E, I, or U in it, he said, I just could not say. He said, so everything came out garbled. I said, so how long did you have this stammering tongue? He said, until I was about 12 years old. I was like, so you couldn't talk to the age of 12? He said, no, I could not talk at all. And so he said, I could hear and everything, so if my parents gave me something to do or told me something, I knew what they were saying. He said, my duty every day was to get up and take the cows out the pasture. He said, and so he said every morning I would get out. He's like, we had only like 4 or 5 cows. He said I would wrangle them up and I would take them to pasture. He said, and on the way to pasture, we always stopped at the creek. He said the cows would drink out of the creek water. And he said, and then I would take the cows on the pasture. He said, this morning I was so sleepy. He said, I was so sleepy. He said that when I was taking the cows to pasture, he said, I let them stop to drink out of the creek. He said, and I fell asleep. He said, I laid down on the ground. He said, and I fell asleep. He said, all of a sudden I heard this booming voice that said, Henry, get up and follow me. That's just how he said it. He said, and I turned around and I said, what? He said, and I was scared. He said, because he said, I knew that my pa, which was his father, he said, my pa was going to get me. He said, because the cows were gone. He said, I didn't know where they were. He said, I thought they had gotten away. And as it turns out, the cows had took themselves to pasture. They knew right where to go. So he really didn't need to lead them. He said, so the cows ended up being in the pasture. He said, but I was so afraid that that was my father, and he had caught me sleeping, and he told me to get up. And he said, I looked around and I said, I was looking around, he said, and there was nobody there. And so he said, I ran home. He said, because I had lost the cows and everything. He said, I ran home. He said, when I got home, he said, I was so afraid. He said, his father and his mother were sitting there. And he said, he just looked and he said, Paul, he said, I didn't mean to let the cows go to pasture. I fell asleep because I was so tired. He's like, his mother said, Henry, you talking. You are talking. He said he was talking. And he said, God visited me in that creek that day. He said, I know it was the voice of God who told me, Henry, get up and follow me. He said, and I've been following him ever since. And so he said that his mother, he said, so of course his father found out about the cows, and of course, and they went out, you know, after that and looked for him, and they found him in the pasture. They had taken themselves out. He said, but I didn't get in trouble. He said, because God had released my stammering tongue. He said, after that, he said, all the townspeople came because he was known as the boy with the stammering tongue, couldn't talk. So back then, you know, back in the early 1900s, and that's how he found out about that doctor too, because remember, they couldn't, you know, go to the doctor and all that stuff. And Luther was very close to Guthrie and Langston, where he lived. So anyway, but he grew up in Luther. But Guthrie was, I think, closer to Luther than it was to Langston. But anyway, so he said all the townspeople came. He said churches invited, you know, everybody wanted him to come and tell the story of how God released his stammering tongue. And he said, so he and his mother traveled around, and so he said that lasted about a year. I guess, you know, just like in today's society, you hear of a miracle and the novelty. For us now, it lasts all of 2 hours. Back then, it might have lasted a year before the next miracle or whatever happened. So he was kind of a local celebrity for the first time, because he became a local celebrity later in life at that time when he was 12. So when he was telling the story on film, he told the story, and then at the end he said, and I'm so glad that God visited me that day. And all of a sudden he started crying. The tears started flowing. We caught all this on tape. Oh, it was such a beautiful story, the way he told it. And he started crying, and he said, I'm just happy. I was like, oh wow, this is perfect footage. I was like, Brian, get a zoom in. You know, I'm giving Brian the signals with my hand, you know, what to do. And so anyway, so he told the story. Okay, so where was I? I got off on that story. Oh, we were going to visit the cemetery and all that. Oh, but anyway, yeah, when he was a kid, so after he started talking, you know, everything was normal then. And so he was talking and everything. He said, so he was talking to his mom one day, and he said, I told my mom when I was a little boy, he said, Mom, I'm gonna live to be 100. He said it just like that. He didn't say 100. He said 100 or 100. However the old folks talk. He said, I told my mother, Mom, I'm gonna live to be 100. And he said, his mother said, well, you could live to be 100. And he said he told her that she had told him that. And then he said years passed. He said, and his mother died at the age of 99. His mother was 99, just shy of 100. Beautiful woman too. Oh, his mother was beautiful. Anyway, he showed me a picture of her. Anyway, so he said when his mother was 99, he said he was about 70 or something at the time. He said, and he told his mother, remember when I told you I'm gonna live to be 100? He was like, look like you gonna live to be 100. And so, but he said she died that year. He was like, cause you 99. He was like, so now I'm gonna have to outlive you. So you know I'm gonna live to 100. I still believe that. He did. He knew he was gonna live to be 100, and he lived to be 102. He died at 102. His mother died at 99, but he was still happy. He said she was just shy of 100. He's like, and I like to look at it as she decided to die so that she could let me at least live to 99 and pass her and make it to 100. He said, and I did. He said, and I'm the only child who made it to 100. He said all the rest of them died. None of the others lived to even be 90. They died in either their 70s or 80s. And I think a few died in their 60s. He said I was the middle child. I think he was, out of the 10, he was like number 6. something like that. So he was like right in the middle. He said, but I lived longer. I outlived all my sisters and brothers and my parents, you know. And so I said, that was just wonderful. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. I said I was going to talk about the brother and the piano, the 10 siblings, and knew he would live to be 100. His mother died at 99. Okay, let's see. Was there anything else? Okay. There's a few other shorter stories in there that we'll talk about, but we'll continue that next week. And then we'll get into the book story, and then after that, the story of his death. And then we'll be finishing up the whole series. So remember, I said I wanted this to be two videos, but it's not happening because of me getting sick. Let's see, we're at 20 minutes. Perfect. That's where I wanted to keep this, right at 20 minutes. Okay, so we're going to end today's story of Mr. Andrews. And I don't know if I ever showed y'all his obituary. I know I showed y'all the picture of him and me. And this was when we went to the land where he was born. We were right by the creek. Or were we at the cemetery when we took this. And I have so many other pictures, but they're all put away. And once I find them, I will show them to you. We have a lot of photos, a lot. And they're all in color. I did those that one in black and white. I did in fact, all the colored ones that I have, I also have those in black and white because for the book, we had to use the black and white photos. They requested that we use black and white for the book. And so that's why it's in black and white. And then the ones that the same photos are printed in color too. The book people, the Oklahoma Heritage Association, they paid for the development and the film of the black and white. And then I had to pay my own for the colored picture. So I just had my own film. But anyway, this is his obituary. I don't know if I showed it to you. And then on the other side, you see my name on there under the special thank yous. Yep. So I thought that was honorable for that to happen. Oh, another thing, other than meeting the centenarian, the other thing is I found a tumbleweed dealer, you guys. I'm thinking of dinner out there on that smoker because it's ready to come off now. It's hours later since I shot that first video. And I'm titling that the bonus video, but I'm going to post that first because you see me with a big mound of mess with this yarn. I was telling y'all about the story about it, so I won't spoil it. But the blanket I was telling you that I made with that yarn, I'm taking it down because it's so heavy. So I'm taking this down and I'm going to do something else with this yarn. I think I'm going to make a series of shawls with it. And I might make some market bags, but I'm going to have to use the chains in between the stitches because this is so heavy. I've never used this because it's too heavy. I felt I would smother in it. And it was going to be like an ugly snuggly, but it was just too heavy. This thing weighs about 20 pounds. So I am currently frogging it. You're going to see the first part of the story in the first video, so you've already seen it. So this is what became of the blanket, okay? I decided today to just do it. And then my blanket is over on the bed now. That's the perfect ugly snuggly. It is nice and lightweight. It's a little heavy, but not as heavy as this, but it's the perfect whatever for what I needed and wanted in a ugly snuggly. Okay, so I'm taking this down, and like I said, I'm going to make a trashy shawl with this, the triangular, and then I'll probably make with this color, I will make the rectangular. I'll make a triangular with this, and with the rest of the yarn, I could make some market bags in the diamond mesh stitch, and then whatever's left over is just left over, okay? But this is just too much and too heavy for me, so I can do something productive with this and still be able to have it of use. Okay, so I'm gonna get off of here now because I need to go get the food off the grill. And the bell pepper and the tomato turned out good. That's off, is in the kitchen now. All I need to take off the grill now are the veggie packs and the pork steak. So I let that cook a little longer because I sauced the pork steak, so I wanted the sauce to sink into the meat. Okay, so I will talk to you guys later, and may God bless you all. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.